Hi everyone. Hey everyone, welcome to today's session. Going to kick off in a few minutes, so feel free to grab your lunch, get comfy, and yeah, we'll get going in the next few minutes. Thanks.
All my life, I've been a good girl trying to do what's right. Never told no lies, then you came around. And suddenly my world turned upside down. Now there's no way out. I tried to fight against it, shut out what all my friends said. Can't get you out of my head. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I keep letting you in, though I know it's not a good thing. I got you under my skin. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. You're so out of line. You make me bad and I don't know why. But that's what I like about ya. Yeah, that's what I like about ya. I'm out of my mind. You got me running all the red lights. But that's what I like about ya. Yeah, that's what I like about ya. That's what I like about ya. Yeah, that's what I like about ya. That's what I like about ya. Yeah, that's what I like about ya. I don't care if my daddy don't think we're the perfect pair. It's my affair. Yeah, I don't know why. My mama worries when I'm out all night. She thinks I'm 9. I try to fight against it, shut out what all my friends said. Can't get you out of my head. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I keep letting you in, though I know it's not a good thing. I got you under my skin. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. You're so out of line. You make me bad and I don't know why. That's what I like about ya. Yeah, that's what I like about ya. I'm out of my mind. You got me running all the red lights. That's what I like about ya.
Wow, what an upbeat song. Hopefully I can keep some of that energy in today's webinar. So hello everyone and welcome to today's session. What we're going to explore in a bit more detail with our panelists today is the incredible demand for talent that we've seen in the Australian market and the war and the competition this has created between Australian businesses. So I'm Rich, I'm going to be your host for today, and I'm excited to be joined by some incredible talent and recruitment leaders from the Australian market from LinkedIn, Culture Amp and Airtree Ventures. Quick note to everyone today, thanks for joining again. A recording of this session will be shared with you tomorrow. And lastly, you will hopefully see the chat or question function within Zoom. Please feel free to shoot any questions into there. And what I'll do is I'll be able to read those out to our panelists today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers. Today, we've got Andrea, who is the Global Director of Talent at Culture Amp. Today, I'm going to refer to Andrea as Andy. Andrew Donald, Head of Talent at Airtree Ventures. Millie Skur, also joining us as Head of Leadership and Acquisition at LinkedIn. So, welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar. How are you all?
Yeah, very well.
Man, good stuff. So, look, love to get to know you guys in a bit more detail, especially for everyone on the call today. So, Millie, I'll throw this to yourself. You know, love to hear a bit more about you, particularly your experience and your journey to date. You know, becoming a talent leader here in the Australian market.
Thanks, Richard. So my experience within recruitment has always been in-house. I started my recruitment journey at Apple and have spent the last 7 years at LinkedIn, where I currently lead executive recruitment for APAC. So I have a team of senior recruiters sitting out of Singapore, and we're responsible for recruiting the most senior talent within APAC at LinkedIn, within our non-tech side of the business.
Fantastic. Thanks, Millie. Andrew, how about yourself?
All right, a little bit about me. So born and raised in Z, been in recruitment for about 15 years now. Started out in a small boutique recruitment firm here in Australia or Sydney. I've always been a technology specialist. Then went to Charterhouse, which was a large multinational. I was brought on there to build out their digital division. So that was more small to medium-sized software houses or startups way back then. Then moved to Talent International, who is Australia's largest government recruitment supplier. Again, brought on there to do the same thing, build out a digital division. That was all high-tech startups. And thought, why am I doing this for someone else? I'll do it myself. So founded The Onset, which is a digital recruitment firm specializing and only working with startups. And at the time, I was doing a lot of work with the Airtree portfolio. Find myself here now. Airtree, been here 4 years. Absolutely love it. Extremely lucky and privileged to be working with some of the smartest minds and the best startups in the country. If you don't know who Airtree is, Australia's leading or largest VC. We've got $4 billion platforms, so unicorns, and I think there's 70 across the portfolio. My role is I'm helping these founders, all those startups, with all their talent requirements. So talent strategies, interviewing, org structures, tools, systems, and recruitment 101. That's kind of me in a nutshell.
Fantastic. Quite different from the recruitment days on the other side of the fence then.
Yeah.
How about you, Andy?
Hi, I'm Andrea Adams, but Andy Adams for this session to avoid the confusion between me and Andrew. I'm currently leading talent globally at Culture Amp. And for those who don't know who Culture Amp are, we're an employee experience platform, and we help companies take action to improve on their employee engagement, their retention, and their performance. We're a global business, and we've got offices in Australia, North America, and the UK. A little bit about me. I've had a career in both HR and recruiting. I've worked in agencies, I've worked in RPO, internal recruiting teams in both startup, scale up, and also some large corporate businesses. I've managed some global change projects, which have really been centered around people change. Which brings me to now. Aside from my role as a teacher, a cook, a cleaner, and a referee of 2 boys while working from home, I joined Culture Amp at the start of the year, and I've been leading the business through a time of unprecedented growth. So we started the year around about 450 campers, which is what we call our employees, and we're hoping to the end of the year closer to 700. So it's been a huge year, and particularly challenging in a time where there is such a strong war for talent right now. But a great time to be leading the TA efforts, and really excited that we are on track to hit that target.
Fantastic. Thanks, Andy. Incredibly exciting growth by the sounds of it. Andy, I'll keep it with yourself. You mentioned a few different recruitment functions in your time, the RPO model, for example. What insights can you give us on the current talent function at Culture Amp today that you're using to achieve that growth?
Yeah, we're running a pretty lean team right now. So we're small but fierce recruiting team that's in the US, UK, and Australia. So there's about 10 of us globally right now. We've got all different levels of recruiting, and they're working on different domains. So we've got sales and marketing recruiters and tech recruiters. Underpinning all of that is our exceptional recruitment coordinators that are the glue that hold everything together. So they keep us on track and make sure that our candidate experience is never compromised. To add to that, we don't use agencies at all. So to get through this time of growth, we've needed to look at some other solutions. And so we're working with a talent partner in the US to help us build out some of our sales teams. So it's an RPO type agreement. However, they're fully integrated within our team, which has been a really amazing way of working. To add to that, we are looking at adding sourcing to our Australian team as well in the coming weeks. So that's how we're built out.
Wow, that's so interesting. Nothing so straightforward, is it? And Millie, how about yourself? Talk to us about sort of how or give us some of the insights on the function of the recruitment team at LinkedIn.
Yeah, sure. I think like most tech organizations, from a talent acquisition perspective, we really are segmented into tech and non-tech, which is what I referenced before. And I sit within our non-tech hiring side. Maybe I'll talk to some of the key strategic investments we're making within talent acquisition at the moment. We are heavily focused on talent attraction, which I'm sure we'll speak to later on in some of the questions. We're actually building out that team. And so some examples of where we're investing is on our recruitment marketing. So everything that a non-LinkedIn employee might see as they're going through LinkedIn or potentially other platforms that would attract people to come and consider a job at LinkedIn. We're also heavily investing on our internal hiring strategy as well. And so hiring some key project managers there to make sure that we are making our internal opportunities as visible to our employees as possible, giving them the tools that they might need to consider a role in a different line of business, leveraging their transferable skills. And they're two of the key areas that we're really focused on at the moment within LinkedIn.
Wow. So a lot of investment going into the resources there. Amazing. Millie, most people know LinkedIn as this incredible platform globally that has an immense amount of data on employee trends, right? So if we dig into some of that data right now, 1 in 3 Australians are open to a new job, right? So what can you tell us, if the majority of businesses are hiring, what can you tell us has changed in the talent market for that to be the case?
I think it's really interesting. So if we look at some of the LinkedIn data that we have available to us, what we can see is today we actually have 6.8 times the amount of job openings for recruiters than we did this time 1 year ago. I think that demonstrates how organizations are either growing or really rebuilding their talent acquisition teams around the world. And then probably 2 other ways I think are important for us to consider. One is as global economies begin to reshape themselves, I think that's really made people during this pandemic realize the importance of what they're doing and whether they are in the right job, in the right country, working for the right company, or even following the right career. And myself personally, I actually moved back home to Sydney from Singapore during the pandemic. So I am part of this concept of the great reshuffle that our CEO, Ryan Roslansky, talks about. I think also organizations have obviously thought about how work will be shaped moving forward. So whether that's anything from remote to hybrid work, making sure they have the right roles and right people in place. And it's really, I guess, had us see different opportunities open up than what we were seeing pre-pandemic.
Well, I'm blown away by that original stat, first of all, that almost 7 times the requirement for recruiters. Is that corporate internal recruiters specifically, or both sides of the fence?
It's both sides of the fence for sure. We're definitely, I can speak from a LinkedIn perspective, but as our company is back in a hyper growth mode, growing more than 30% year on year from an employee perspective, we are, seeing growth within our recruitment teams far beyond what we can, we can't keep up with the growth of recruiters that we're seeing to be able to keep up with the demand of the business. So it's an exciting time to be in TA, but as we all know, incredibly competitive for talent.
Fantastic. And you mentioned earlier, Millie, that I can't remember the phrase, but effectively it's around recruitment marketing, right? And I know that's part of the LinkedIn platform. Are you seeing now in the last, right, if we think about the last, 18 months, there's been an incredible demand for talent, as we're here to talk about today. Have you seen an increase in businesses sort of taking on employer branding and focusing on that?
Yeah, and I think it's, I think we're ultimately on the back foot if we are just focusing on building strong talent pipelines, but haven't put the resources in place to ensure that we're actually attracting, branding ourselves, making sure the message that we want prospective employees to think about our organization is actually out there. And particularly when we think about diversity, there's a lot of data online that references the fact that if you are looking for women as one diversity point, if you're reaching out to a woman, a cold outreach headhunting, they take about 4 times more contact points than a male candidate. So if you're thinking about, resting on your laurels and hoping that you can attract great senior female leaders by sending one message, that's not always going to be the case. So we really do need to make sure that as every organization, we're trying to beat that competitive edge that we all are looking for at the moment by making sure we're branding ourselves appropriately before we need to make the hires.
That is a great takeaway in my opinion, right? Not for talent acquisition professionals to sort of necessarily give up or take it as a non-interest, right, from a female sort of candidate. It's just going to take potentially a few more steps and a bit more outreach. That's fantastic. Andrew, I'd like to throw it to yourself and get your opinion on, Millie there was talking about, talent pooling alone is not necessarily the only strategy you can rely on. Keen to get your thoughts on the talent pool in Australia. There's two chains of thought, right? You've got, some industries that I speak to, they'll say that they're incredibly talent short, the international talent not being able to enter Australia. You could argue that it's smaller than ever. However, Millie is an example of international talent being able to leverage people over, across borders, whether it's out of Australia. So are you seeing more talent than ever available because you can get people working remotely, or, is it tighter than ever? What are your thoughts?
So it's a bit of both. So I think what I've seen is the talent pool. I think the talent pool stayed roughly the same. I think people that have dual citizenship are both coming and leaving. I saw a large influx of senior talent returning to Australia. This has slowed as COVID's gotten worse here. So big shout out. I hope everyone's holding up okay and coping well. I think the tech scene or ecosystem within Australia has really taken off. So Airtree alone has deployed $100 million in the last 6 months. There's probably going to be about 1,000 roles just across our portfolio at any given time. I think large corporates have decided, or they've now fast forwarded their digital transformation projects. So they're screaming out for the same talent. So I think there's just more in Australia. The talent stayed the same. I think if you're going to look to offshore, we've got a few in the portfolio that do it well. Different Employment Hero, Canva, and Prosper, just to name a couple. Their advice is, if you're going to do it, invest heavily up front to make sure you do it properly. Make sure you got the right structure and process from day one. Seen a huge influx in remote working. That's not people necessarily just leaving and going or removing themselves from the cities and going to the country. It's actually globally. And I've also seen there's a lot of people actually tapping into the NZ market because it's quite good for remote working, and the time zones are great. So I don't know if it answered the question, but yes and no.
Kind of. Andy, I saw a big smile from you there when Andrew mentioned the NZ market. Is that something you guys are tapping into as well?
Yeah, look, what my answer to that would be is we're all looking at the same talent, right? We're all trying to get to the same thing. So you have to get a little bit creative in these times as well. And I think it is a costly and it is a time-consuming process, and you do really need that infrastructure to support this and the new ways of working. But setting up entities, offshore delivery, or using PEOs in other countries has to become a part of any good talent strategy moving forward.
Fantastic, good stuff. And Andrew, back on the point that you mentioned earlier, Airtree Ventures in their portfolio has what is referred to, I think it was 7 unicorns, which is the term given to a $1 billion valuation on a company. And those are companies like Canva, GoOne, Spaceship, Prosper, right? The question I have for you is the smaller businesses in Australia, or those startups, right? How can these startups, if they don't have the excitement behind them, the unicorn status, and potentially the same strength of brand, how can these guys compete for talent in your opinion? What have you seen from the portfolio?
Yeah, it's a tough one. And as Andy said, we're all competing for the same talent, the banks, Atlassian, all the other startups. So I think understanding what your EVP is, really, really knowing what your culture is and making that your differentiator. The cool thing about startups, you get equity, so you get a bit of skin in the game. So you feel like you're part of it. And on that, what I will say, so a great little tip or trick if you're actually giving equity is keep your employees updated on the valuation of the business. So therefore, they're informed of what the value is of that ESOP or equity component is for them. Just a great way to keep everyone engaged. Startups can be a little bit more, a lot more flexible than the large organizations. So work-life balance, some people are night owls, other people have kids. So be output focused, work with your employees and what works for them. I guess another key point, what I kind of drive is its ownership. So getting to work on, I guess, end-to-end solutions, more responsibility on project features where you might not get within larger organizations. But I guess the key is less red tape. So getting shit done, doing it faster, but having fun doing it.
Yeah, fantastic. I think what I love about these sessions is, it's not always high fives and celebrations for you talent acquisition professionals, right? Which is, it's probably more the other side of it. Okay. Andrew, I just wanted to ask you a quick question there. You talked about, options, right? And being invested in these companies and the transparency of how much they're worth. And there's a suggestion there that they're always going to increase in value. Have you ever seen, not necessarily from that portfolio, but in times where businesses are struggling, has it ever had the opposite effect where people, go in and expect to make a quick buck and it not work for you or those brands?
Oh, I always think you're not going to get rich quick, right? So I'll look at it has. I mean, definitely not in our portfolio, but outside the portfolio. I think just choose wisely. Not every horse is going to win, and not everyone's going to get the returns that you may want. But you're going to gain a lot of experience that you're not somewhere else. You're going to have the responsibility. You're going to be with multiple different hats. So I think, therefore, you're adding a lot more strings to your bow, therefore making you a lot more attractive moving forward.
And do you think that businesses should lead with that, i.e., hey, join us, you'll be vested, or or can it have the wrong outcome when you lead with that, or is it actually a good thing to lead with that?
So I think transparency is key. So I think you need to outline what is involved, what's in it for them, and from an ESOP perspective or the equity component, just be open and transparent. This is what it is now. This is what it could be, but that's what it could be, not what it is. So don't go spending the money without receiving it first.
Good point. Good bit of financial wellness advice there.
There you go.
So Andy, you head up talent for Culture Amp. Culture Amp, in my opinion, is such an exciting solution for businesses globally and in Australia. And I just want to give a bit of context to this, right? I spend my days really fortunate to speak to HR leaders and execs across Australia. And one of the biggest problems they have is, they appreciate that they have a talent issue. Talent is their most expensive resource, and they're sort of struggling with that gap between how can they retain them and what's the sentiment internally. And so I do believe that, in the next 2 to 5 years, it will almost be the norm for every business to have some form of employee engagement tool like Culture Amp. Mm-hmm. So it's really exciting to have you here today. So thank you. Then it's not surprising, right? When we think about Culture Amp, you have a 4.7 out of 5 on Glassdoor, which is very impressive and puts you amongst the highest in the Australian sort of business landscape. So keen to hear, has this had an impact? Do people actually, when they're looking at a job, do they check out Glassdoor? And how has that impacted your talent acquisition at Culture Amp?
Yeah, it is. It is a pretty impressive score. But equally, holding on to that it can be quite daunting too. But to answer your question, yeah, it certainly does help our ability to hire. But it's not just about what people see on Glassdoor. Glassdoor is the result of what we put into our culture and the experience that people are having with us. So it's the interactions that people have that really help with that. And we're always making sure that we're gathering feedback along the way to get those sorts of scores. And to get to this place of being highly engaged employees and candidates, we have to absolutely put our culture first. And we truly are a culture first organisation. And no, this is not a shameless plug for our product. But we are always seeking employee feedback along the steps through the employee life cycle, which is one of our values, right? Learn faster through feedback. So we have opportunities to always be asking and always be acting on that feedback. In saying that, we do get the odd Glassdoor review that isn't always in our favour, and that's okay, right? Because that's an opportunity for us to take a little step back and pull apart what has been said. And we may not agree at times, but regardless, it is an opportunity for us to learn and to move forward from that.
Fantastic.
I'll just throw something in there. I mean, Glassdoor reviews, you've always got to remember that, especially from a negative perspective, because people do look at these and walk away with maybe the wrong perception. So negative reviews can be disgruntled people for whatever reason. So I think if there's a chain of disgruntled or bad reviews, maybe that's something. But if it's 1 in 100, read between the lines, I think.
Yeah. You don't always have to agree with them. You just have to be able to see what people have said and then learn from it, right?
Yeah.
Unreal. Thanks, guys. And Millie, I think in your role, it's quite unique in this forum today because you are exclusively focused on, senior leadership and executive positions. So what can you share with us around, the qualities that you're looking for and why people in leadership positions would choose to join LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it may not necessarily apply just to leadership hiring, but something we are seeing really across the board at LinkedIn. And I love that we are seeing it also at the leadership hiring level, is this shift towards skills, not schools. And so moving away from this concept that somebody needs to have, pedigree education and come from, all of the top organizations in order to be successful at your business, which is just not true. And so we're seeing a huge shift towards skills-based hiring, which, I think a lot of organizations are still trying to define what does that really look like. But it's really exciting that that message is coming from the top, skills, not schools, something that our CEO speaks about all the time. Particularly when we're hiring leaders, I know we spoke about sort of internal mobility and transformation before, but we are always looking to see where there are transferable skills throughout our organization, to see where we can essentially implant non-traditional talent to increase diversity within our business. So whether that's diversity of gender, industry, age, diversity of thought, where we have that talent that exists within the business. And if we can help to transform somebody's career by giving them a new opportunity within a new leadership role at LinkedIn, that is something that we always consider when we open up a new role. And often we actually do only post roles internally, either for a period of time or always. Then when we think about sort of another aspect that I know a lot of companies look at when it relates to hiring new talent, especially in leadership roles, is the notion of a culture fit. I know it's a word that a lot of companies are moving away from. Certainly us, where we're thinking more about culture add, because by trying to fit people into a box and by trying to find people who fit the mold, we are not going to diversify our organization and win. And then to the second part of your question around why do leaders choose to join LinkedIn? I think we have a very unique opportunity that leaders are able to come to LinkedIn and really create impacts. I think leaders that we hire are generally very interested to connect people to our vision, which is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. That's a huge, lofty goal. And I think that's something that when we consider the types of leaders we want to attract, that is something that, is exciting and something that people want to be a part of at LinkedIn.
Fantastic. And out of interest, Millie, you talked about skills-based hiring. How do you go about implementing skills-based hiring? Are you actually saying that, hey, let's put these people through tests to test their skills? So it's like a quantitative outcome. And what is the outcome of a business like yours moving to skills-based hiring? What are you seeing as a follow-on?
Yeah, so I think a lot of that work, the groundwork, really rests with our recruiters to work closely and build strong partnerships with their hiring managers to really define what does this role need, and move away from, I want to hire people from XYZ company, which is something that I think everyone who's ever recruited has heard from a lot of hiring managers. And so we really try to work hard to define what are the core skills that this role needs, what is missing within the team, where are we missing diversity beyond the sort of cookie cutter aspects. So it is really up to the recruiters to have those conversations and push back and challenge our leaders who aren't, being consistent with what they've shared. As for what we've seen as an outcome of that, I think it's really allowed us to make strides on a lot of our diversity metrics and the types of people that we've been hiring. Like I said, we, like many organizations, are still truly trying to define what is skills-based hiring and how can we get even better at that. So it is definitely a journey, but something that we're excited that we're embracing with open arms right now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Millie. And there's a sort of, you just reminded me of an excellent book I read. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Millie, if I got the name wrong, but it was Reid Hoffman's book. Is it Reliance?
Alliance.
Alliance, fantastic. Incredible book I read a few years ago on, like you said, having those open, honest conversations with your employees around, you know, the sort of the journeys they go on within your organization and resetting those expectations over time. I thought that was an excellent read.
Yeah.
So I'd like to sort of change tack slightly and maybe look at some of the strategies and tactics that you guys have maybe put in place or some takeaways for today. So Andrew, you represent some incredible organizations that we've already touched on. And I alluded to it earlier, some things work really well, and there's also some failings that every individual in the TA space has. So we'd love to hear from you, you know, if you have any that didn't work so well, but what worked, you know, well, what was an effective strategy or tactic that has worked well in the TA space for some of the brands you represent?
Yeah, it's a tough one. So I guess, first of all, what has worked probably doesn't work as well anymore, I think, is advertising. So I've never really had a great return on investment when advertising. When I do use LinkedIn, really. I think job boards are much more effective when the borders are open. Overseas talent might not know the market that well, therefore that's where they first go to. But right now, I think that's quite redundant. But I still think advertising has a place. I think advertising is a great way to build and lift your candidate branding and awareness. But if you're going to do it, make sure you do it well. Make sure that you're creating a really good job description. So I think referrals is key. This is not reinventing the wheel at all. So what I sit down, when we hire into the portfolio, I'll sit down with that person, that new hire, and just ask them, who do you know? Who would you work with again? Who's been the best boss that you've ever worked with? Who's a high performer that you know? Building a bit of a list for you to go and approach. And it's kind of more of a warm referral as well. And then if you haven't done that across the organization, it's a great exercise to do that with the entire team. Therefore, warm referrals, reach out, you're going to get a much larger response. Headhunting.
Sorry, I just wanted to dig into that because I think that's an excellent piece of advice. Just to explore that a little further. Are you doing that at the end of their probation? They're happy. They are bought into your brand. Who do you know? And then are you saying to these people, can you go out and reach out to your four most the four people you'd most like to work with, or do you want to take that on yourself because you might be more proactive as a recruiter? What are your thoughts on implementing that strategy?
Yeah, so I think the best, so a few different ones there. So I think, once upon a time when I could go into the offices, I'd hang out with those startups and actually do it myself. Because referrals are great. And I think if you ask people for referrals, they kind of do a quick shout out and then they kind of just go, oh, yeah, couldn't find anyone in the network. Then you don't have a big hit list. I think if you actually sit down with them, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, go through LinkedIn, work through that, you actually build out a much larger talent pool internally. I think hiring managers should always be doing outreach. If they're not, are they in the right role? Don't tell me you're too busy, because people are the most important product within your organization. But then again, I like to do it myself just so that the message is communicated correctly, selling the opportunity in the right possible way. If there's not a TA function, then get somebody to do it, a manager, the owner. But if there is a TA function, get them to do it.
Fantastic. I feel like you really sort of, I was going to ask Millie and Andy whether their hiring managers or line managers are reaching out, but they can't say no now, can they?
So absolutely. I think they're all willing to get involved when they need to, and the response rate is generally really impressive. So it's worthwhile them getting involved for sure.
I think it's also key.
Sorry, Millie.
Sorry, I was going to add there, Richard, to Andy's point. I think it is key to also think about how we can be creative and stand out, right? Like we've all accepted that we're in this war for talent. It's a heavily competitive market. And so if we just have recruiters reaching out all the time and not having, even if it's a second touch point coming from a hiring manager, then we are just on the back foot again. Like I said, some things that we try to do as well, particularly for super challenging or niche roles, is we have the hiring manager film a video too, to be able to talk to what is beyond the job description. What is the team actually like? What are they like as a manager? Where could this role lead to? So I think we always need to continue to think through creative ways that we can stand out from everyone else who's approaching the same talent.
Yeah. So, and then on that, I mean, we're all headhunting. So, I mean, I always try and put myself in the shoes. So it's like, why did I open that email? So if you're outreaching to somebody, why are you outreaching to them, and put yourself in their shoes, and what would they want to hear? So it's hard, right? Like, you need to personalize it. You need to get quirky. I don't know why I like something that's funny, catchy subject line, get them to actually open that email or whatever it is. But then I think you also needed to make sure that you're targeting the right people, a small targeted group, and within the body of that email have really informative information on the role, the company, what's in it for them. Like, it's a two-way street. You've got to remember that. While I'm on a roll, I'll just keep going. So I think technology is key. So using technology to help you. So if you should have an ATS, or you should have some sort of a database. So reminders, buckets, tags, something to help you organize your talent pools. But I think most importantly, you need to have a really, really good process. You need to have that ironed out before you start engaging in talent. So I think speed's super important. I also think you need to know how to package up who you are, what the role is, to really sell the dream. You've got to remember that these people that you want to hire, other people want to hire them. So they're in demand. Put your best foot forward.
Yep. Awesome. Millie, I think you mentioned something which resonated with some of the audience there, which was, correct me if I'm wrong, you talked about a video from hiring managers, right? So someone asked, when would you share that video content with the potential hire? What stage of the process?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it depends on, I would say, probably the type of role, potentially even level of talent. I think, I would probably position it differently throughout the process. If we were hiring entry-level salespeople who we want to get really excited and build that momentum, in that case, we might share that very early on so they get a quick look into the team. For somebody who might be more of a senior level candidate and is very passive, we might just try to get them on the phone and send that as a follow-up. In order to not bombard this person with, hey, we've got a job, we want you to start right now, especially if they're not looking and not interested. So I would say it's not one size fits all approach. I would say having that in your back pocket to utilize as a recruiter when you think it's going to be valuable to the candidate and get them more on the hook, that's when I would use it.
Fantastic. There's a few questions coming through on talent pooling now, which is clearly an area of interest. So let's explore that in a bit more detail. Millie, I can assume, tell me if I'm wrong here, again, if you're out there, if you're looking across APAC for senior level hires, these are going to be roles that take a long time, many touch points. You referenced it earlier. How do you talk to us about that? How do you currently build a strategic data-driven pipeline so when one of these senior roles arise internally, you're ready to pounce?
So I might sort of touch on our nurture strategy in particular. So one particular area that we are focused on, but before I jump into that, without doing a shameless LinkedIn plug, to build the talent pools to start with, we do rely heavily on our own products. One of those being LinkedIn Talent Insights, which gives you visibility into different talent trends, hiring demands, where there might be, and I know we're speaking about remote work, but where there might be hidden gem locations to search for that talent, where other big cities are sort of saturated with job postings and not enough talent. So we definitely use tools like that to firstly identify the talent pools. And then to talk a little bit about nurture, I can share an example of something we've recently launched for our women in leadership strategy across the region. So I mentioned before, it's challenging to attract women leaders, particularly in countries where, or in parts of the country where the talent pool actually doesn't exist. It's not as big as the male population. And so it's really important to make sure that we start as early as we can to identify, engage, and nurture that talent. So one example is that we have a roundtable series called Women Who Lead, which we run across the region. Recently ran our second Australia version a few weeks ago. where we build it as an opportunity for people to network, just to engage with our brand, with our leaders, with each other. People can then, identify whether they would be open to roles at LinkedIn. And then, depending on what roles we might have that would be suitable, a recruiter from my team would reach out immediately. If they are more passive or still want to stay engaged with our brand, we might invite them to an event to speak to our employee base. So not recruitment related. And I think that's the point with a lot of these niche roles or roles that you're getting ready to hire in the future, is it doesn't always need to be about a role or an interview. I think building engagement with your brand and building engagement with your leaders is invaluable, because when this person is thinking about their next role, where they want to work, your company will come front of mind to them because of the experience you've had with them. And Andrew spoke before about process is so important. I think this is even, earlier than you start in a recruitment process, but if they're having a great experience engaging with your brand, that's going to leave, it's going to be a memorable experience for them when they think about their next job.
That's fantastic. And you can thank Jennifer in the audience for asking the question on, what platforms you'd recommend for talent pooling, to allow you to have the plug there, but also some amazing initiative on actually actioning and getting engagement from that talent pool via those roundtables. That's incredible. So, on the theme of talent pooling, I think we also need to look internally at our workforce as well, right? We've spoken a lot about externally, recruiting and bringing people in. So Andy, I'll go to you for this one. I'm keen to get your thoughts on the whole philosophy of, build and develop people versus go out and find them. And is there an element of, risk that you have to factor in, the risk of spending time on someone you have or the cost of someone new? And is that a calculation that you guys make or not?
Yeah. For me, I think it absolutely has to be a balance of both. I think they go hand in hand with each other. And it also, it does depend on the stage of growth that your business is in. My belief is if you don't invest in the growth and development of your current people, then you're going to be doing a whole lot more of buying the talent, because if you don't invest in them, then someone else will. We've been really lucky, and I guess this is the advantage of working for a growth business in this year has really seen us growing. So it's given us an opportunity for people to move around into roles internally as well. And to Millie's point earlier, in always advertising those roles, that's incredibly important so that people know what is available within the organisation so they can move around. When you're scaling, you don't always have the luxury of just doing that build. You have to buy. We need more people. We need more engineers. We need more people selling our products. So we have to have a balance of the two in making sure that we are buying the talent in recruitment and also building it internally. The thing is, when you are buying that talent and bringing it in, and for us, it's been a lot about those leadership positions, that's creating opportunity as well for our other team members, in that they've now got the chance to develop from other leaders from other organisations who have done these things before at scale. And it's really going to support the growth trajectories of our current people as well.
Fantastic. I think what that has allowed us to do, Andy, is segue nicely into focusing on the people you have internally, right? The engagement and retention of your employees. So I'll keep it with you, Andy, if that's okay. What I've heard, in the last 18 months, as I mentioned earlier, is people really focusing more than ever. COVID has shone a light on this, is, the importance of, strong EVP, being focused on employee wellness across those sort of different pillars of physical, social, financial, etc. So, in your opinion, and particularly because you might have the data on it, what do you feel that candidates are looking for, from, what trends are you seeing in industry that they're looking for?
Yeah, I think Millie's got some stats on this, but this is more what we've seen is that in 2020 and 2021, people are looking for different things and they really value different things from an employer now. And so we've seen people shift away from, the fancy office, the bring your dogs to work and those sorts of things, into people asking a lot more real questions about what your business does and being connected to the purpose of the organisation. And we're finding that we're talking to candidates more about their own personal motivations as well, and that connection piece as well. This is more anecdotal as well, but I'm finding that there's a lot more talk with candidates too around the need for security and safety. I think as people are moving into new roles, people want to know about the financial performance of the business. People want to know about what happened in 2020 if people, how were redundancies handled? How did the business deal with that level of change? And is there that security moving forward? So that if they do make a change in these unsettling times and they feel confident in that move. So yeah, security, safety, purpose, those are the things that we're seeing a lot more of that are in conversations about what the business stands for.
Fantastic. I can certainly relate to culture having no correlation between a nice office and, that sort of stuff. It's long gone are those days.
Yeah.
So Millie, would love to hear from you on that, if you've got any insights into what people are looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. So I dug into some insights on LinkedIn that I could find on what employees in Australia are looking for in their next role. And this is based on surveys of thousands of employees in Australia. And what's interesting is, like Andy shared, less so is sort of the office environment is up there, and even compensation is not within the top three. So the top three things of what employees were looking for in Australia is firstly good work-life balance, which probably comes as no surprise, but I think that has been emphasized through this pandemic situation. Secondly is they're looking for colleagues and a culture that inspires employees to do their best work. So again, like that focus on impact is super important. And then third is open and effective management. People are looking for strong leaders to inspire them, to help grow them. So it was interesting to see those three as the standouts for us in Australia at the moment.
Fantastic. And Millie, on that, is that related to this thing called COVID that we've seen, that's changed these people's impacts, or has that just been happening regardless over the last few years?
I think environmental impacts will always sort of change that, and we wouldn't expect that to stay stagnant. I can speak from my personal experience, would challenge everyone on the call to think about their own personal experience. But through this pandemic, I'm sure there's been countless times where we've all sat and reflected, like, what am I doing? Am I in the right job? Am I in the right country, the right company? Like I was sharing before, because it's these times that make you think, I need to be focused, I need to be close to my family, or maybe now it's not the time to continue along the same trajectory. There's growth opportunity in this business. Should I jump over now? Is it the right time now? So I think it just put a lot of questions in people's minds. And so I think it's definitely helping to shift this, particularly good work-life balance. We've all been, completely overrun, working from home, working way more hours than we ever would before. So it is great to see there's a shift in that. People are realizing that, what they really need out of their organization to be fulfilled in themselves.
Fantastic. Guys, I've got one more question that's really important to myself and everyone on this call today. So I wanted to ask that, and then I want to jump into some of the questions. There's a lot of questions coming through. So, what is and has the importance has never changed is the focus that businesses should have on diversity and inclusion. So we're here talking about the war for talent and how hard it is to find people. How have you found that, and how have you, of course, businesses, I'm assuming, can't compromise on the DEI side of things. So how have you overcome that challenge? I'm not sure, Andy, I think this one I'll put to you if that's okay.
Yeah, happy to jump in on this one. And I'll start with, it's not easy, right? It is tough. It really is. And especially, right now when we are dealing with what we're dealing with, which is a scarcity for talent. Culture Amp's made some pretty public statements about their commitment to building a world of work where everyone can come and thrive, and where this is absolutely where hiring comes into this. So if I think about some things on a practical side, we've built processes within TA that see us investing time on roles for more proactive search of underrepresented groups ahead of us advertising. So when we know that a role is coming available, or we know that there's something coming up within a team, we're really focused on that before we go out externally, because we know that when we go out externally, we are going to see the same type of candidates. So we have a sourcing approach ahead of advertising. the leading indicator for hiring diverse talent is actually interviewing diverse talent. So you have to really be focused on building in that pipeline and having a continuous flow. I will say it's not just the role of TA, and in particular at Culture Amp, we've built programs to educate our leaders on how to manage across racial dynamics. And you'll often find yourself in those conversations where we're all keeping ourselves really honest to the commitment that we made to these goals. And making the commitment to those goals has to start with the executive team as well. And we're really lucky that we've got a place where we are working in an environment where we are all committed and we're all willing to help build that as an environment.
Amazing. Thanks, Andy. I appreciate that. So guys, we've got quite a few questions come through from the audience today. So I wanted to put these questions to you. You guys can choose who answers these. Let's have a quick look here. So from the top, some stats say 30 to 40% of employees are looking to move. Do you believe this, and what are the options to improve retention? I think we spent a bit of time on retention, but anyone want to add anything there?
Oh, I'll jump in. So first of all, yeah, I do think it's correct. I think there's a lot of passive people out there. What I'm seeing, I think people want a sense of that they're valued. So therefore open and transparency within the organization, keeping people, this is going to sound really cliche, but communication is key. Communicate from the top all the way down is key. And then vice versa, back up. So therefore it's a circle loop of continuous improvement.
Yep. Fantastic. And Andy, back to the last point we were on, someone here has sort of highlighted unconscious bias and, in the hiring process. And their question is, what measurements, process or technology do we have in place to continually challenge this? And I wasn't sure if that's something Culture Amp had looked at, or maybe Andrew or...
Yeah, we're not using any technology at the moment. Ours is more so around the education piece with our recruiters and with our hiring managers. But we aren't using any technology. I do believe there is a place for it though, absolutely. And there is some amazing products that are out there that help support that. But at this minute, that's not something that we're currently using.
Okay, thank you. So one of the questions that's come from a couple of people is, we're here talking about the demand for talent, which has driven increased salary demands from employees. And the question has been, is this sustainable long-term? What impact is this having on businesses? Are people pricing themselves out of, positions entirely? And again, is that a trend? Are salaries increasing because of the demand? Is that a fact, or is it just on the odd roll here and there?
So I think it's a fact. I mean, I've seen, especially across, I guess, the key pillars, product, engineering, I've seen quite a large increase. I'm not going to quote a number. I think we need to be very, very careful. If you just lift the bar or raise that all up to match other expectations with other organizations, once the borders open and then we can sponsor again, there's going to be a big issue, as in that person coming in being sponsored has to be as an equal of that individual within your organization. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but that's going to be interesting.
So you're saying, Andrew, that when talent comes through in the future, and we've got sort of more options available, and we potentially don't need to pay as much, that might be a problem because they have to be at the same level. Is that what you're getting at?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's sort of not sustainable, and you can't go backwards, of course. And how about, are you internally across the three businesses seeing people internally come to you for pay rises more frequently now, or is their first option to go to market and look at a new job? What are you seeing internally from existing employees?
My perspective is going to be slightly different because it's what's happening across the portfolio. When I'm talking to people that are looking for new roles, it's not necessarily money. I think it ties back into what Millie said. What are the three motivators? What are those things? Flexibility is big. Working with like-minded or really, really creative, smart individuals. is too. But then I'm probably biased towards startups where can I have, the flexibility? Where can I have skin in the game? Where can I have more ownership? Everything that I kind of said earlier on. Money does talk, but I think if you're going to be playing the war on talent and just throwing money at them, you're going to lose. They're going to continue to jump for more money, and you're going to be going around and around in circles chasing your tail.
Yeah. I think someone's asked here, and Millie, I think maybe you gave us some really good examples. It's not necessarily directed at you, but the comment was we need to be more creative with attracting talent with non-traditional channels, right? You referenced an idea earlier around the talent pooling and seminars and roundtables. Does anyone else have any examples of unique channels? Andrew, you gave us New Zealand as an untapped potential or a big opportunity at the moment. Andy's keen to keep that a secret. But any any other ideas from you guys? And Andrew, Andrew, you're not a fan of the job boards initially as well, so maybe that's a tip in itself. Don't start there.
No, I didn't say I wasn't a fan of them. I just said return on investment isn't as strong as other channels. I think there's great talent globally, right? So it depends the time zones that you work in. If you're a global organization, I know that South America has got great engineering talent. I know some in our portfolio outsource and use a lot of engineering talent from Eastern Europe and Sri Lanka. Like a lot of the help service functions are also in the Philippines. So there's talent pools everywhere. It's just about what works for you.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, look, guys, I'd like. Sorry, Andy.
No, that's fine. I was just saying, I would say exactly similar is thinking outside, like, where we can access talent outside of Australia has to be a part of your consideration set.
Amazing. Guys, I'd like to thank you all for today. Wrap up there. I'd say that hopefully it's been insightful for the audience. If there are a few other questions, we'll circulate the answers to those or our feedback. But really enjoyed it today. Thank you so much. A recording for our audience will be going out tomorrow. So on that note, thank you, and I'll chat to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.